Hello, everyone. Welcome to the EUG podcast. My name is Hector Vasquez. I'm here with my good friend, Kenny Johnson. Kenny Johnson, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Finally great to be here after years, more than a year or two of talking about the Cobrinha and coming out, discussing things. So it's great to be here.
Nice. Thanks. Thank you for I see we're drinking some Coke here.
Oh, the American black tea, baby. This gives me power.
Nice.
It helps in digestion.
Open this one up for me right here.
Oh, man.
Come on. I got to join you on this.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's start talking about your childhood and your upbringing. Tell me a little bit about that, where you grew up.
I'm originally from the Midwest, from Racine, Wisconsin.
All right.
And, graduated from school there. I went to school in Iowa. And I started training for my first Olympics in college. And then after I graduated from Iowa in 93, and I moved to Chicago, and then I was trained for the 96 Olympics there. I was a coach at Northwestern University, and this one's giving me problems. Hold on. Hold on, I have a big key.
Come on, brother.
Came open easy.
Man, I see you do this every day. What's
Mine
up?
came open so easy.
Damn.
I need it.
There it is.
Whoo.
Nice. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Cheers.
yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. Let's do our thing.
So I started coaching at Northwestern and trained for the 96 Olympics there, and then I moved to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs and trained for the 2000 there. And while I was in training for Olympics, I was thinking I thought I was going to retire in 2000. What my backup plans? So I started working for a company called T. Rowe Price.
Okay.
And handled retirement plans, 401ks, things of that nature. And then one of my clients was Capitol Records, EMI Records.
Oh.
So they hired me, and that's how I got out to California. So when I went from the client or from the service side, T. Rowe Price, and I got hired directly by EMI, and that's how I moved to California. I thought I was going to be done, but kept going. So I ended up training for 7 Olympics. I didn't make any, but I had a nice little run at it and been wrestling for about 40 years, pretty much straight. And that brings me to sitting in this chair.
There you go. And once you moved to California, you were doing that, and then you said, you know what? I want to try and continue allowing others to learn everything that I learned, pass my knowledge on, pretty much. Is what you did.
Growing up wrestling, there was no MMA. There was no. When I started wrestling in the 80s,
right,
84. So you either went to WWE,
right,
or Olympics, and then you're done. And most people weren't going either place.
Right,
So
Kurt Angle and all those guys.
Kurt Angle was the first one to kind of break through that we know of, but Vern Gagne and Gorilla Monsoon. There's some old wrestlers that actually, Nick Bockwinkel, Brad Rangans, a lot of guys that actually wrestle were national champs in college and went on that way. But the first person that probably comes to mind in the modern era is like a Kurt Angle.
Nice. I'm going to stop you there. When you were wrestling in Iowa, what are other big guys or good guys that came out of there during while you were there, or even before that, or after?
I mean, at Iowa, I wrestled for Dan Gable, and we were Big Ten and national champs, undefeated each year I was there. And so many Olympians and world champions came out of there, people that, Royce Elger, Barry Davis, Bannock brothers, the Brands brothers,
Right.
Tom Brands, Terry Brands. Tom is actually the head coach of the Iowa Hawkeyes now after it went Gable. Jimmy Zaleski was the assistant, then he was the head coach for a while, and then Tom Brands took over. So we had, whether it was the Hawkeye Wrestling Club or the wrestlers, you had a solid 6, 8, 10 people deep that were going to be Olympic champs, world champ, national champs. So
nice.
No easy days.
No easy days.
No easy days.
I know.
Easy goes is what I say.
It's crazy. So you moved. You went to LA. You decided, hey, I'm gonna pass on my knowledge to other guys. How was that transition going back to what you knew?
My whole life, everyone was like, you can't wrestle forever.
Right.
And really, there was no way unless you were going to become a high school wrestling coach or a college coach.
Right.
And unless you were become a college coach, which was a different lifestyle, and I kind of wanted. High school coaches don't make any money. I grew up pretty broke. So I was like, and wrestling is a sport that you're not going to get riches from. So I put my whole life,
that's what you did.
At the time, 30 plus years of my life to trying to make the Olympic team. And you don't really get rich from that. There's no sponsors, not a lot of things. so everyone's saying you can't do this forever. You gotta get a job. You gotta get a job. So every Olympics, I'd say, okay, I gotta get a job, and I kind of get a job, and then I'm like, this isn't for me. I want to keep going. I can.
Right.
And when I moved to California, I was like, you know what? Okay, that was my third Olympics I attempted. I was engaged at the time. And I was like, okay, and I had my job. That's why I started working for T. Rowe Price to transition out of sport.
Right.
And that's one of the things that at the Olympic Training Center you had to do is you had to have something, they help you transition out. But then a couple years in, a friend of mine comes to me and said, hey, I have an idea. We're going to do a pro wrestling league, real wrestling.
Okay.
And he said, and it was my teammate from high school, and his dad was our coach and one of his friends. And so I said, they explained to me the concept. They're going to do a hybrid of Greco, freestyle, folk style, and sumo. Mm-hmm. We have investors. We got more investors. And he's like, we want to do this. So I was like, all right, I'm in. Yeah. So I quit my job to go back to wrestling because I figured this is something that could get wrestling into the forefront. We ended up shooting a pilot, pitching it. We had 2 seasons on Fox Sports Net, Star Asia, Eurosports, with global distribution. And during that time, I think we promoted wrestling more with this TV show than wrestling could have ever promoted itself because we put it on a world stage more than just one day for the national championships, which you'll show 2 hours of. 1 or 2 days of the Olympics. You'll never see a world championships on TV. So really you only see a couple days of wrestling every year, every couple years. And we had it where it was a weekly show.
And at some point recently, they wanted to eliminate wrestling out of the Olympics.
Yeah, the politics on that, I think they wanted to get rid of it. And I think what they wanted to do was, get other sports in. So then,
like water polo?
Or, hey man, that sport's tough. Like look, now they put breakdancing in the Olympics or something. Go figure. It's like and then skateboarding, which I love skateboarding, but they got their own X Games. Right. It's kind of like you don't have the Olympics, and then the Olympics, wrestling and track and field don't go, we're going to make our own championships over here and go away from Olympics. So I feel the Olympics is like anything, it's becoming more and more and more corporate, and they don't care about the athletes. They just care about the money. So
and how is that? Like, I know the Olympics, they have an Olympic team, and do they support their athletes? Do they how does that work? Because I've heard good and bad things about it.
I've had only positive experience, but at the end of the day, if you're looking for someone to support you because you want to fulfill your dreams, you're going to be sadly mistaken. You're going to have to go out there and get yourself. The wrestling, as far as wrestling goes, there might be something a little bit different version of it now, but the idea back there was like you made the ladder, so you were the top 3. Right. Top 3 got a little stipend at the time. It was like pennies.
Right.
And if you won the Olympics or you won the World Championship, you get like maybe a one-off, like a bonus or something. Right. But as far as most of the wrestlers were coaches somewhere, so that they could at least get a little pay. And most of the wrestlers that were trained seriously weren't going to be the head coach because you can't be the head coach at a college or something. So they were like most like grad assistant, volunteer coach, getting a little bit of money, training covered, and then they work some odd jobs somewhere else or whatever, just like me. I drove a truck in Chicago while I coached. And, do whatever you can do to earn the money. You're just like a starving athlete, starving actor, It's the same.
It's like everything, right?
Going after your dreams, you're going to do it, and it doesn't matter what it takes. And wrestling's definitely one of those ones you're not going to, be supported. The government doesn't support like when they talk about like other countries, their government supports them. There's government supported things that help. But it's not like you don't work for the government. The government's handing you money, like maybe like in Russia or something. Know? So you're going after it on your own.
I see.
And so you have to be pretty intensely committed 100% to what you're doing, or else you're going to fall short. And you're going to fall short anyways. When you think about it, like I look at my wrestling career and say, okay, I didn't take away all the college and high school and the championships. You're looking at the Olympics. One person every 4 years makes my weight class. There's only like 8 weight classes. One person every 4 years. Pretty much you're going to look at and you say to yourself, being real, you look and go, you're not going to make it. But you're going to do it anyways. You're going to give everything you got. You don't look at it like some people look at it like, I'm not going to make it, so I don't have to do that much. They just want maybe like how fighters do it. Oh, I'm a fighter, but they don't train like fighters. So if you look at it and the odds are really stacked up against you. So one way you look at it and go, there is pretty much virtually, it's like, it's harder to make Olympic team than win the lottery.
Yeah.
There's one person in the
Correct.
entire United States can make that team. So you look at it and say, never going to make it. And that's the fucking reason why you want it.
Why you want it? Yeah.
And you'll do anything you
Right,
can for it. And I
right.
did it for, 30 plus years. And it became the training, became the drug for me.
Right.
you know.
And now, obviously, you had your wrestling, career, and you said, "Okay, I'm in LA." How did the doors open for you for the MMA? And I also see that you work with grapplers that do ADCC as well. How did that?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
I because of my wrestling background, where I can pinpoint it to a couple places. Like when we were coming up, when even coaching, Randy Couture, Dan Henderson, Coleman, Randleman, the wrestlers, Mark Kerr, they were all doing Pride and some different form of stuff. So we got exposed to it and you got to work with them. We'd all be coaching at different places. We'd go to a tournament at night. We'd come in at night. We'd all train wrestling wise, but also,
Right.
things doing that. When I got to LA, I was wearing a wrestling shirt at working out at like a 24-hour fitness.
Yeah.
And this guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, you wrestle?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, I'm a boxing coach, and I got a guy that's a jiu-jitsu guy, and we're teaching. We have like a small gym. We're coaching a couple guys there, trying to be fighters."
Right.
I'm like, "Hey, sounds good. You got mats?" I mean, Southern California is
Right.
not a hotbed for wrestling, so no gyms. So I went there, and so I met. It was Jimmy Smith was a purple belt at the time,
Yeah.
and he had just did Fight Quest back in
I
the day.
remember that. Yeah.
And then he's like, "Okay, it's us three, and here's the two guys we're training, Bibiano Fernandez and Jacare."
Wow.
And they were just coming in because Gilberto from Pro Jiu-Jitsu Gear brought them in, and so I started training those guys. So that was happening, and then I moved into this neighborhood right in North Redondo, so it's nice. And when I was moving in, this guy across the street, teardrop on the face, tattoo, cholo guy comes up and is like, "Hey, Holmes, this is my neighborhood."
Okay.
And I said, "Well, fuck, I just bought this house, so it's kind of like our neighborhood." And then he was
What'd
like,
he
well,
say?
And then he was like, "Well, I live here. My mom lives there. She's been there 60 years, and my sister's here." I said, "You know what, man?" I said, "If anything happens, how about we get each other? We're fucking men. No one's going to mess with this
Right.
neighborhood." And then he said, "Oh, do you fight?" And I'm like, "No." I was like, "I don't even want to have this conversation."
Right.
He goes, "Oh, I was going to say, because we're going to go train. You could train with us." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Where are you guys going to go train?" He goes, "Oh, right down the street." I said, "Are you going to train?" He said, "Yeah." I was like, so in my mind, I was like, I'm going to find out whose fucking neighborhood this is right now.
Right.
So I go in the house, tell my wife at the time, I say, I gotta get wraps and stuff. I got to go work out. She's like, I go, "Yeah." I go, "Apparently we got to figure out whose neighborhood this
Right.
is." So he brings me down and introduced me to his friend who's a fighter, and fighter on a regional level after I
Right.
found whoever it was. But the gym he brings me to, so I go in there, I beat him up and his friends. And then their coach was Higan Machado.
No way.
So Higan, I don't know anything about
Right.
jiu-jitsu. So Higan puts his arm around me after the training.
Right.
He goes, "My brother, do you want to be my wrestling coach?" I'm like, "Amazing.
Amazing.
There's a gym with mats I can wrestle at right down the street from my house."
Okay.
But I don't know who this is.
Right.
So I go home, I go Higan Machado, and I was like, "This is the Dan Gable of jiu-jitsu."
Right.
I bought a gi the next day, and I started doing that was when I was 35. And then from Higan, one day, it was like midnight, and he calls me, he's like, "Hey, you have to come to the academy and bring your stuff to train." So I look over at my wife. I mean, Higan's crazy, but
Right.
I'm like, I don't say no Higan. I was like, "All right.
Let's go.
So he introduced me to, it was Lyoto Machida and Noguera were doing a book. Remember those books, the technique books, the thick
Right.
ones?
Right.
And they wanted to get some training in. So I started training them, and Rafael Fajal was there as well. And then we hit it off. We wrestled 2 or 3 hours, and then just created a good friendship. And then real soon after that, Noguera, wins the UFC belt, and then he becomes the Ultimate Fighter season 9, so become the coach there, and then just start Black House was just starting to come about. So at the time there was no Black House; it was just Ed's Warehouse, Sinister Clothing.
Right.
He had just sold it, so he sold Warehouse. So we'd train there. We trained Higgins. There wasn't even a name of it yet at the time, but it just so happened that at the time Noguera, Big Noguera, Little Noguera, Lyoto, and Feijão. And then one day I saw Feijão and he's like, hey, I'm going to have my friend come train with us if that's okay.
Right.
I said, yeah, man, no problem.
Yeah.
Anderson Silva.
Oh my.
This is how just like.
Keeps going, getting better,
I
right?
didn't know who Anderson was because Anderson was, he was Cage
killing.
Warriors at
Yeah.
the time. First fight in UFC's fight Lieben.
Lieben.
So it was
That was the
around-
first time I saw him too. I was like,
So it's like,
dude, where's
this
this guy?
time? So, Noguera's name was bigger at the time, even because, he was like, Anderson was Cage Warrior. So this started there, and Ed Suarez and Joinha, and that's how I started working with those crew of people,
Right.
and then just built from there. And then I started working for Pro Elite. Remember the Pro Elite?
Pro Elite, yeah.
I was the head of
Actually,
sponsorships.
My good friend Jamie Hara fought on that against Jiva Santana, which
Yeah.
are both of my good friends now.
Jamie's
Shout out to Jay.
tough. Hey, that guy
bro.
was tough.
Tough, bro. And he fought the Rhino, Doug Marshall.
Yep.
Right?
They had some good fights in there. A
That's
lot
some-
of good.
yeah.
And so when I was the head of sponsorships there was a guy I didn't know who it was JD Penn. I didn't know that was BJ's brother. I barely knew who BJ was.
Right.
And you know him, but I didn't know. So I actually had a fight in Pro Elite. Just it was a last minute fight. They needed someone. I'm like, can you fight? I'm like, okay. And
What's the pay?
Didn't
back
even
then?
matter. I had some sponsors, and I was like, hey, I wore the sponsored gear out, signed the sponsorship deals, so it worked out fine.
Yeah.
After that fight, then prior to that, when people would come in to train or they wanted to sign, they'd say, hey, Kenny, go down to Legends, because Jeremy Lappin owned Legends.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, go down and train with them. Tell me what you think. See if they're whatever.
Right.
Or they come and say, hey, we want to get some wrestling. Say, hey, our sponsorship guy.
Right.
So I go with different people. One, Paul Daly. So him and I hit it off well, and we started training. And I stayed with Paul Daly until just the last
Just
fight.
finally, yeah.
Well, one day, JD says, hey, do you want to help my brother? He's got to fight. He's fighting a wrestler. I was like, yeah, sure. He said, but you have to go to Hawaii tomorrow. I'm like, I'm not mad at that. So they got me cleared to take off of work, and it was for BJ when he fought Sean Shirk.
Oh, wow.
And I started working with BJ from boom. And then just like weird stuff like
Connections,
that
yeah,
just
yeah.
kept going. But where it started was the 20 years of wrestling I had prior to that.
Right.
They were looking for that. And then I started jiu-jitsu, and I really fell in love with jiu-jitsu a lot. Wrestling was something I did. Jiu-jitsu is something I just loved.
Right.
I didn't realize how much I love wrestling until I started doing more jiu-jitsu, and then when I started seeing, as I was doing jiu-jitsu, I saw where the wrestling would fit in, and it just made so much sense to me.
And there's one thing about wrestling that I tell the parents, especially when somebody asks me out in the streets or anywhere, they tell me, where would I put my kid to start? Honestly, I say wrestling. And they say, why do you say wrestling if you're a jiu-jitsu guy? I say, because you'll learn your base.
Yeah.
And then you can get the jiu-jitsu in there as well. But I think wrestling is very important. Not only for jiu-jitsu, but for MMA fighters nowadays.
Yeah.
You got to get your wrestling in.
Yep.
I mean, it's, if not, probably the best part of it.
People ask me all the time, they're like, oh, is wrestling the toughest sport? And I'm always like, nope. You know what's tough? Gymnastics. I always say water polo, shooting. There's so many things that are tough because
Right.
at the highest level, everything is
Tough.
tough.
Yeah.
And to me, since I'm a wrestler, there ain't none to wrestling.
Yeah.
If
You
you're a
just know.
wrestler, there ain't none to wrestling.
Right.
But when they ask me what should I put my kid in thing, I'm like, I'll say, I always say wrestling or jiu-jitsu. It gives them a spectrum. And then jiu-jitsu is something they're going to have to find a gym and go pay.
Right.
Wrestling could be accessible to them if they have wrestling in their school.
Right.
And so I always say both. And I'm saying not one or the other. You can do both. It's very simple.
Right.
And no matter what. And then if they say, what about Muay Thai or whatever? I'm like, hey, Muay Thai is great too.
Yeah.
If they want to get a workout, have them try out and see which one they like, because you never know. But I always tell those people too, I always say, you should listen to me when I talk about jiu-jitsu. Not because I'm not Cobrinha. I'm not Hesker. You know what I mean? It's like, I found jiu-jitsu after wrestling. And I fell in love with it. And I trained for 4 Olympics without wrestling a wrestler. I only did jiu-jitsu. So my wrestling was here, and then my wrestling went like this as my jiu-jitsu went up.
Yeah.
And then I see other people, like say maybe take Cobrinha. His jiu-jitsu is so high level. When the more he wrestled, I think he got better in jiu-jitsu. It just goes together.
Because you could tie it. He was
Tie
tying it together. Yeah.
And so I always tell people, you can do both. They're same mother, different father.
Right. Talking about, you mentioned Cobrinha. You've got to work with Cobrinha since 2012. Is
Right.
that correct? That's when you started. How was that? how'd you guys meet? How'd you guys get started?
You know,
and where did it go from there?
I was training Fabricio Verdum.
Okay.
I got introduced to him with Rafael Cordero. And then we did the Ultimate Fighter Season 2 Brazil. It was about 2012. And his jiu-jitsu coach that he had over there, because we did it in Sao Paulo, was Fabio Gurgel. And so I met Fabio there, and we just smashed with each other every day. Like, we wrestled, did jiu-jitsu. Like, him and I got like an immediate friendship, and we just love working together. And then he had mentioned to me, and he mentioned to Cobrinha, you know, separately, hey, you guys should get together.
Right.
I'm going to set this up. And I was training Verdum at certain days and times. Then Cobrinha was training Verdum at certain days and times. You know, we didn't know this. But then Verdum wanted to consolidate, basically saying, hey, on this day from, let's say, 10 to 11, Cobrinha is going to teach me jiu-jitsu. You do 11 to 12 is you. So it's like, So then I would go to either Verdum's, and then we would then go to Cobrinha's, and that's when we met. And we started, and then Cobrinha and I would just, I mean, that was, I mean, I feel like he's my family, you know, as much as family could be. And we just loved training together. Like, our idea of training and competition and mindset and things were, I think, exact. The only thing that Cobrinha and I don't probably see eye on is maybe our diet.
The eating. Cheers.
Yes.
Cheers.
Just
Let him.
maybe our diet.
Cheers. A little cheers.
But if there was going to be something to disagree about, make it the diet.
I don't know, you know what? I don't think he agrees with my diet neither. But hey, it's Mexican style.
American black tea, Mexican style.
So you started working with him.
We started working, and then we did. You know, then we trained, and then he had the, what was it? So it was, and then I was before I met him, I was actually a play-by-play announcer for the ADCC in 2009.
Oh, look at that!
Spain.
Crazy, right?
Gilberto was one of the sponsors, so he said, "Hey, do you want to go there and do the announcing?"
Yeah.
So, but I watched him there against Mendez, and he lost there, and then 12, 15, 17.
Right.
Then we won it.
You made he made some adjustments, right? When he got with you, you had him wrestle high-level wrestlers.
We were wrestling hard and going hard in the paint.
I heard there's a story that there was a high-level wrestler
Right.
in your gym. He went in there. First day was okay, but
we'll go 1-0 wrestler.
yeah,
Second time we come in here, we go 1-0 Cobrinha.
right.
And then there wasn't a third time.
Oh,
Yeah, because this wrestler didn't want to come back and train so much. He always said he would. We tried to get him here because he had been very helpful, but he didn't.
Right.
So there you go. Cobrinha wins.
it's
He
2000.
made a huge adjustment. That would be like sending a wrestler into train with Cobrinha on the mat, and the wrestler's second workout beats him.
Yeah,
That would
wow.
be uncanny if something like that could occur. I don't think it's possible, to tell you the truth.
Right.
But that's like you're talking about. Cobrinha is a different whole animal. I begged Cobrinha. He could go make the Olympic team. Kennedy could make the Olympic wrestling team in Brazil
I believe it.
right now, and they probably the only. I don't even know a father and son on team at the same time. They
On the
probably
same
do it.
time, then
I've
make
been
it.
begging him since. So then he doesn't want. So he's out. So now I got Cobrinha. I can beg him for or little Cobrinha. I can beg him for another decade. Because he could go in there and with some small adjustments
Right. And
do it.
so you guys win 2013. 2015, you're still working
Yep.
with him. Then we get to 2017, and he wins it 3 times straight,
Yep.
creating himself the Super Grand Slam champion.
Right.
That hasn't been done ever to this point.
And to someone to do that, it's going to take something extra special.
Yes.
You know, and you know, as it was going on, you saw what heard a Grand Slam, but you're looking at, like, even though his goal was to do this, I didn't understand fully. I just saw, okay, we got this big tournament. I'm focused here. I wasn't looking at the big picture. Mine was just here to here, and we're winning them all. Then it comes to ADCC, where it happens to be the same. He gave one whole year of his life to win this cycle, but his whole life to
make
get
it
to
happen.
that 1 year.
Yeah. 2017 finals. He's in there with AJ Agazar.
Yep.
Before that, he comes to the corner. What do you tell him?
So, we were backstage warming up, and I always ask my host, okay, what's your plan? What's your game plan? You know, I kind of know it, but I like to verbalize it so I hear, they hear. We agree on everything, so I know what to yell out.
Same thing as the MMA fighters, right?
Everything
Just
the
let's sit
same.
down, let's talk, let's make sure we're on the same page.
Yes, I don't want to be yelling something and you're trying
like,
something else. So, and plus, it's a way to, it's getting towards there. Okay, how's it going? What's going? There's a the clock starts ticking down when you know you're about to be up. So it's a way to just kind of
relax the body.
He said, okay, because now it's 10 minutes, 10 minutes. You know, 10 minutes no points, then 10 minutes points, and then. So he said, well, the first 10 minutes, I'm just going to kind of, you know, coast them right before the 10 minute, you know, I'm going to either, you know, pull guard or so that after there, then I can get my sweep, I get my points, I can be on top. And I hear this so much, and I see the pulling guard, which I understand why there's guard pulling to a certain degree, but most of the time, you know, no. Like I said, I pull guard, but when I do, I'm on top. It's usually I pull guard by lifting someone in the air and slam them on their back. So I help them pull guard. That's what I do.
Just
I help
make
other
life
people
easy.
pull guard.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I know Cobrina's got the best. It's not how strong, it's how long you can be strong. And that guy can be strong. There is no end to his gas tank. So I said to him, I said, do you have the gas to go 20 minutes from second number one? He goes, yeah. I go, well, then there you go. Because the other guy does not. So I said, from the second it goes, go out there and put it on him.
Yeah.
You're not going to get tired. And if, let's say you are tired, mentally you won't, so you're going to push past it. Your opponent will not be able to stay with this pace, and you'll break him. And that's exactly what happened. He goes, okay. So went out there and put the foot on the gas right away. Same techniques, same everything, except for not going to hang back and let this guy feel like he has any light in that tunnel, because sometimes giving someone hope is fucking dangerous.
They build their confidence. Like, wait a second, I can actually hang with this dude right now.
Hang with this guy, because they're coming out there scared. Because you got to be scared for going.
Oh, for sure.
And then all of a sudden, for 10 minutes, nothing really happens. He's like, "Fuck, I feel like I can do something," instead of shutting their soul down. And that's exactly what Cobrinha did. And he was kind of nice right before then too, which was pretty. I mean, for me, mind-blowing, but saying iconic, whatever you want to say, right before, like, all the matches, you get one coach in the corner. And, you know, that's Fabio. Fabio's in there. And right before the finals, Fabio goes, you're going in the corner. Which is, you know, I mean, I've been in the corner for so much and trained so much, but to be that important that Fabio's like, no,
you go.
You go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know,
He realized Cobrinha's dealing with a wrestler.
and so he's
like,
got
hey,
the jiu-jitsu on point, whatever his thing. But that's how, man,
confidence they have
you
in
want to tell how much confidence or how humble someone is, because a lot of times in those places, someone that's not a true coach, a true that has any one ounce of something they need. Some spotlight, they would never allow that.
And that also happens in MMA, brother. You deal with that a lot. I've dealt with that a lot sometimes.
You know, so they have a guy like Fabio, who's one of the greatest. He's like, no, you go.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay. And so a lot of things happened in 15 minutes that were monumental.
Yeah, for sure.
But had been years in the making. And it was, you get people that are like-minded that have one goal. The goal is Cobrinha wins, however that goal. And someone like Fabio, who's been there for him, you know, you look at the pictures of him holding them up with the 1, the 2, the 3, you know, and he was there to hold them up, but not in the corner. And that just shows you how important and how fucking amazing of a coach that Fabio, and he's so humble and just say, hey, no, I think this is better because he's going against the wrestler. You go there. I mean, and he's not looking at like, I want to be in the corner. It's like, I need Cobrinha to win.
You know, and that's one thing I this last time Brandon Moreno fought, we had probably some of the best coaches in that corner. Capetillo in the boxing, James Krause, and everybody was open-minded. Everybody was there to help that kid win. And it wasn't, oh, well, no. No.
Yeah.
Everybody was like-minded. You know, James Krause had a great game plan going into the fight. Capetillo, Pedro, myself, we all were, you know, on the same page with nobody, oh, no, no.
Right.
And that right there makes your life easier, and also for the fighter, because he knows, like, everybody's on the same page, you know?
Yeah, it helps because you have sometimes, you know, there's always a posturing in there for people that don't feel comfortable understanding the full nature of what's going on.
Right.
So you'll have your jiu-jitsu coach, whoever, and we're going to use jiu-jitsu. And then you get the wrestling coach, we're going to use wrestling. You got this. But the real coach is like, sets up a game plan based on everyone's input,
Right.
the fighter, and then the fighter has to give that final stamp.
So yeah, working together makes a big difference, in a
Because
corner.
each coach has something. You have to get to a place or be a coach that understands the big picture. And when you make that transition to coach, your work is done in that fucking gym.
Yeah.
It's not done under the spotlights. That's for
That's
your fighter
correct.
to be out there. And each coach, they're looking to get something. It's a lot of times because they're looking to get that notoriety. They want the next student. They want the money. They want the Instagram, whatever they're looking for.
Right.
So when you set up a team, a true team, and you sit down and say, okay, this is who we're fighting or this is what we're doing. Okay, what's the game plan? I always look at the fighter. Fighter, you're the general. You're in control. It's you.
Right.
You're the nucleus.
Yeah.
You put the team in place. And then we sit down, here's who we're fighting, or
Right.
we don't know who we're fighting yet, but this is how we're going to train. Everyone signs off. I don't have to worry about showing something. They go to the gym like, yeah, fuck that wrestling.
Right.
Or fuck jujitsu or strike. Everyone understands the importance. And then the coach thought, hey, how was training day? Man, it's looking good. The entries to the takedown look good. We were hitting the pads. I was having them shoot. Boom. Or I might be like, okay, I got him doing takedown drills off the wall.
Right.
As soon as we drop to the ground, we're going to what you want them to go to.
Right.
That back control, that Kimura trap. Boom. So every
Right.
time we're finishing there, then they go to jujitsu and then they're doing
Tying it
takedowns to
together.
that, and they're tying things together. Then we come to sparring and then hopefully
You start seeing it.
you start seeing it all, and that going in the direction. Then you sit in the corner, and everyone knows. Everyone's not just going yelling at the same time. You're like, "Come on!" It's like everyone knows. If they're on their feet, I don't have to say anything.
I just wait until it's my part. It's
When
exactly
it's my part, and then you see when you know what's going. You'll hear go go go. They're on the ground. Okay, it's jujitsu, or hey, everyone can yell a hands up or short time. But when there's chaos in the corner, it's a problem. So being able to work together and have good coaching, and at that particular time, I learned a lot about coaching in that 5 seconds from Fabio, which it was so selfless to just, that could have been another. That's a third one. He could sit in the corner, but as everyone knows, he's in the corner. He's just 5 feet back. But to fill that one chair, I thought it was a pretty monumental. And I think in my sports career, let's say as an athlete and coach, everything, I've 2 things stand out to me more than others. So let's just say anything my wrestling. I think the first time I became an All-American was big. When I took second Olympic festival, that was big for me. But outside of that, 2 of my most prized accomplishments are when I got my black belt, which was from Cobrinha, and then watching Cobrinha win that ADCC, and which then capped the Super Grand Slam.
Nice.
I've worked with a lot of champions. I'm not taking anything away, but certain things stick out. I put not only me, but Cobrinha. That was half a decade of time of just really grinding for it, and just something about that fulfillment as a coach, because as you're an athlete, you're a full athlete.
Right.
Then at some point you're an athlete, but you're also coaching too.
Right.
And then there's that struggle between, should I not go to the Worlds and go to this guy's fight? No, fuck that. I got to be a world
Go over
champ.
here.
Then it goes to the point where, when are you going to do Worlds next? I'm like, got to fight. Now you become a full coach. So I always say, first you have to learn, then you have to learn to teach, and then you teach to learn.
Yes.
I think I'm in the teach to learning stage where if I love to compete in jiu-jitsu, but usually I never can because I'm always with my
Working,
athletes. And I'm
yeah.
not taking away from my athlete so I can go do some competition.
Yeah.
If it works, it works. And I think when you get to that zone, I saw Fabio there, and I see Cobrinha's there, like how he's coaching Kennedy, which is amazing. And so being having a good team is so important, and people think it's just the athlete goes out there, do some little things here and there. But when you see like a Cobrinha from like every ounce of his being is dedicated
it.
to this zone.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel I'm that way, but not like that. That's a whole nother, I got to get to that level. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like
for sure.
every coach has a coach. So
Yeah. It
nice.
makes sense. Now you're working with, still doing MMA, still working with other wrestlers and stuff
Right.
like that. If you had a message you wanted to give the next generation about MMA or grappling or wrestling, what would it be?
I would say whatever your goal is, you have to commit to that goal. And you have to make a decision and commit 100%. And before you commit to something, you should probably put down on a paper a list of things that are important to you, which I always tell people what's important to you. And then you can kind of engineer where you're going to go. Because a lot of people think, oh, I want to be a UFC champ. That's important. But I'm going to build this gym over here. That's important. I got my kid over here. That's important. I got my car club over here. It's important. They can't all be important.
No.
You know, I have 2 kids. I'm right here, right now. And just today, I talked to my daughter this morning, but as we're talking about this conversation, I'm not thinking about my kid. I can't think of my kid 24 hours a day, or else I'd do my kid a disservice. Sometimes, and I joke, I'm like, what kid? You think when I'm sitting in the corner of Cobrinha State, I'm thinking of my daughter? You think I need to text her? No way. But my kids growing up with me understand where I'm focused and where I'm dedicated. So you have to find out what's important to you, and then you have to focus on that. And that focus is how you control your behaviors. And if it's important to you, you're going to focus that way. And you can't sometimes have more than one thing that can be the utmost important. And it's not like loving your kids. I can love my kid 100%, and my wife 100%. But when you want to attack something, sometimes you only have that. And the other people have to understand. You have to have communication. And so when you hear a lot of people talk about, I sacrificed to be here. Fucking nothing. You made a choice. Everyone around you sacrifices. My kid didn't choose for me to be here and always gone. My daughter's always asked, Dad, could you stay home?
I know.
I'm making the choice. My kids, my friends, my family, everyone else has to sacrifice. I'm like, it's my wife's son's birthday. We're supposed to go out of town, and they come into California to have a birthday party for him and my family. And I've got this fight with Tony. They're going to California tomorrow. I'm here. It is what it is.
It is what it is.
And so we have to pick what's important, and the people around you have to be on that page too. But if you don't communicate, so I think being honest with what's important to you, being supremely focused, and communicating with the people around you, so everyone can understand where everyone is, and figure out life, and don't think that you're missing anything. Because if you're choosing something, don't look over your shoulder what you're missing. Because the second you look over your shoulder, whatever you're trying to go after is gone.
Yeah.
So
man. A great information for the next generation. Kenny, I had a great time. Man, this was amazing having you here on the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And the American Black Tees, baby.
But let's go. Everyone, thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. Keep evolving in everything that you do. Nice,
brother.